I'll tell you about the only terribly strange story that happened to me and my fellow soldiers. It so happened, dear Anons, that after graduating from university, I voluntarily joined the army. Yes, you can consider me crazy, a bullshit artist, or anyone else, but I don't care. My girlfriend gave me a spanking and dumped me. We dated for 5 years, and a normal job without experience in the regional center of the middle of nowhere was not in sight. I shaved off all of my long hair and turned myself into the military registration and enlistment office. I was awarded an A1 award for health reasons, passed the psychological tests with flying colors, and ended up in the GRU, Russian Military Special Forces in Tambov. Service is service with all that it entails. Terrible physical training, constant running, exhausting duties. At first some fucking hazing, hunger, beatings, parachutes, shooting from all types of weapons, and we had such a thing as TSU, Tactical Special Exercises. In general, they had to complete the assigned task as part of the reconnaissance and sabotage unit. For starters, by quietly infiltrating the reconnaissance area without being caught by the commander's fathers, who, drunk on moonshine, were driving around in Urals on the roads that were in the agreed reconnaissance areas. If the group was caught, then it was fucked. The group was removed. We had a week to complete the mission, and we were required to report to the company commander or sergeant major every 3 hours about the state of the group and the square we were in, so as not to screw up ourselves. All responsibility for the weapons and personnel lay with the senior groups of my conscription, including me. And it was winter. In the forests around the Tambov region, the snowdrifts were up to the balls. The group walked through the forest in military-issue protective stockings for the snow. This was the only thing that somehow protected our feet from moisture. We usually slept right on the snow, close to each other, so as not to freeze. Sleeping bags and raincoats were available, of course, but they did not warm us at all. We got water by melting snow in pots. The whole group smoked 1 cigarette, 2 drags. In short, it was complete hell. On the morning of the 4th day of our journey to the bridge, which we had to blow up, following the mission, we realized that we had lost our way and were God knows where. The landmark we were heading towards, using a fucking map, compass, azimuth, and other achievements of decades-old navigation, was the railroad. According to the calculations of the senior intelligence officer of the lead patrol and the group leader, we should have been in the vicinity of the railway station a long time ago, but there were no hints of it anywhere near. We gathered, conferred, and realized that we were fucked. We were lost. According to the instructions, we had to immediately call in an evacuation group, that is, fail the mission and surrender, but we did not want to embarrass ourselves in front of the entire brigade. And so we decided to split up into patrols, try to figure out where we were, and meet in the same place in an hour, following our own tracks. We split up. My rear patrol and I wandered around for an hour in virgin snow and dense windfall, then went back, ignoring everything. The guys from the main point had already returned and were waiting for us and the guys from the Corps. We said that we had not found any fucking landmarks and were really fed up. But our senior, I'll call him B, made us happy by saying that he had found a power line, an active one, along which we could continue our journey. The power line was marked on the map, about 30 kilometers away, or rather, there were several of them. How he managed to orient himself so wonderfully was his problem. Everyone gathered, made a stop, ate some biscuits and tea, smoked some cigarettes and went on. The last communication session had failed, and the last 2 before it had taken place in conditions of terrible interference. But we did not care. We wanted to finish this drawn-out walk as soon as possible. The food was running out, and we were getting pretty fed up with walking behind each other for days on end, waist-deep in snow. The power line we came to was terribly dilapidated. Wooden poles and rotten, completely rotten in some places, black and green, leaning in different directions. We crawled along like this for a very, very long time, especially since the speed was snail's pace at best. It started to get dark, but we kept moving forward. Our shoulders ached from the backpacks and the guns on them. One of the snipers, my best army friend, and I told each other all sorts of stories about life on the civilian side and dreamed about how hard we would smoke, drink, and fuck chicks when we got home. And so we went. We fell behind the core quite a bit and only slightly saw the guys from the lead patrol. Their loaded figures in white camouflage suits flickered among the trees like ghosts. Then they said over the intercom, "Stop." We stopped. Then from the radio came one of their voices. "Guys, I see a house ahead. There's light in the window. Everyone, let's run." We, bending over, caught up with the others. The boys were already half sitting, half lying down, smoking, and taking turns looking into B8 binoculars. The binoculars reached us too. We studied the shabby, very shabby hut without much interest. Personally, I did not give a shit. We were discussing a chick from one of my buddy's hometowns, who he said he had talked to and chatted up for me on my arrival home. The hut looked more like an old, dilapidated dacha without the remains of a rotten fence sticking out around the perimeter. A dim light bulb without a lampshade hung from the ceiling in the window. I noted for myself that the power line we were walking along turned sharply to the right, deep into the forest. Anyway, we lay there for a bit, chatted, and the machine gunner from our conscription assured us that since there were no other houses around, it was an old house of a gamekeeper or some other fucking devil. We decided to find out from the owners where we were, the way to the nearest anything resembling a settlement, and along the way to beg for some food and smoke. Our teammates, nicknamed Firebrand and Cannonball, stayed back with the backpacks. And we, taking only the weapon, it is forbidden to give or transfer it to anyone, headed to the house. The path to it had been snowed in for 3 days, and apparently it had not been cleared at all, only occasionally walked on. The gate was snowed in, and we went through a huge hole in the fence. More precisely, there was no whole section here. We approached the porch along the same snow-covered path and knocked on the door. There was a strange rustling and awkward stomping sound behind the door. We knocked a few more times. We started looking in the windows, shouting something like, "Open up, please. Soldiers got lost during training," and then the light in the house went out. A young guy, our medical instructor from the junior draft, laughed out loud, like, "The owners of the special forces are chickening out." But after getting beat up by the machine gunner, he quickly shut up. The senior one called out on the radio, "Well, what do you have there?" "Who the hell knows? They won't open the door and that's it. The lights are out," I answered. "I say, get through to them somehow. It will get dark soon, and we don't even know where to go." The guys were looming in front of the darkened windows, and the sniper and I decided to pull the door towards ourselves. Not calculating his strength, my buddy pulled so hard that the rotten door flew out with a crash. We exchanged glances. The hallway smelled of warmth, and something so vile that we jumped back. The rest of our guys ran closer, surrounding the porch. B, who was watching from cover with the rest of the group, cursed over the radio. I took a few steps back, reporting that the door was broken down. It was dark and stinking ahead, and judging by everything, there was another door leading into the house. B told us to go in. Me, the SVD man, and another guy from my draft, and the Beavers. They call the junior draft and the special forces Beavers because all the senior soldiers are bearded men in the mountains. They went around back of the house. That's what we did. We enter, constantly asking if there are people in the house. Damn, I'm writing this here now and remembering how I later wrote a report about the incident at the TSU. Fuck. The 3 of us enter. The flashlight illuminates piles of some rags, a torn to shreds mattress with stuffing sticking out on the floor. A sniper opens one of the doors to the left of us and immediately closes it. "There's a toilet there," he says. "It stinks like hell." We knocked on the door opposite. Nothing. "Hey, open up, please. We're a little lost. Help us get our bearings, please, owners." And then a loud scream was heard from behind the house. Swearing, and we saw the junior men running away from the house. One other guy turned to us and shouted, "Run, guys, it's fucked up out there," and ran on in the direction where the rest of our guys were. My radio started wheezing. B asked, "What the fuck? Where are the Beavers running to?" I looked back at them. The 3rd guy who was with us, a scout sapper, shouted at them, "Come back, you idiots." And right after his scream, I heard the stomping on the other side of the door resume. Only it was faster, sharper, and accompanied by some incomprehensible half-wheezing, half-moaning sound, like some fucking mute. Who the fuck knows? Someone was running around the house and howling. I got nervous, and so did the boys. All this happened in a matter of seconds. My heart felt that I needed to step back. The radio crackled again. B was shouting, "Get away immediately! Run to us immediately, boys! I repeat, run to us!" He was shouting so that his scream reached us from the forest. We ran out of the entryway of the house, instinctively raising our guns. The guys were moving towards us through the snowdrifts from the forest. I held down the push to talk button and asked, "What the fuck? What's wrong with the beavers?" I didn't hear what they answered me, because the sniper, who had looked into the window of the house, suddenly jumped back from it, shouting, "Fuck, let's move." I did not immediately figure out where to run and what to do. I only managed to duck. At that moment, the glass of the house broke. It broke from the inside. Together with the sound of breaking glass, I heard a crazy roar, inhuman. At the same moment, I saw a long, black barrel. A shot flashed. A second one immediately followed. The roar continued. "Go away, run the fuck away," was heard on the radio from 2 channels in a row. The 3 of us. I don't remember how we ran through the snowdrifts from the entryway to circle around and reach our guys. Fuck. I don't remember who was shouting what at that moment, but it was terrifying as an animal. We only had blanks, and the machine gunners had 5.45, so that after successfully completing the training mission, we could ensure the evacuation of the group, just to fuck around, when the group would run after blowing up the bridge with a gun, roughly speaking. The roar from the house was clearly audible, then 2 more shots rang out. The boys were telling us on the radio to run to them, to the place where we had stopped before the wonderful hike. We ran. The boys were sitting and lying there, stunned. Everyone's eyes were fucking crazy. The junior soldiers were on the run. They were the furthest away from home. We said we were safe. B said there was some guy with a double-barreled shotgun shooting out of the window for free. But the funniest thing was that, according to the junior soldiers, they saw a dug hole behind the house, a fresh one, in which lay a blue corpse of a woman, face down, in the remains of her clothes. We were even more freaked out. And then 2 more shots. The pellets whistled through the branches much higher than us, and we immediately gave such a speed that it was just fucking awesome. We were racing at unreal speeds. It was much easier for us. The junior soldiers had our backpacks, and they were dragging them. So we galloped God knows how far in our tracks. By the time we got tired and it got dark, it was about 10 kilometers. Fuck. We fell. We started pumping the connection. Shit. No connection. We got up and raced on. Then there were signal flares every few kilometers, constant beatings on the radio operator. No connection. Already in the dead of night, exhausted to death, we crawled out to the railroad. We spent the night at some nameless way station with a railroad sign sticking out from under the snow. We slept in turns, also half a group, without fires. In the morning we walked and ran along the railroad. Then we made contact. It turns out that they had been looking for us for a long time. I remember how the Ural trucks arrived, how the commanders yelled. Then there were formal debriefings and disciplinary action. Anyway, that's the story, guys. You can blame us as much as you want after that we pissed ourselves and ran away, but we were responsible for the personnel and weapons, and if something happened, it was possible to get into trouble. We had to write and talk to everyone, from the political officer to the psychologist, for a long time, and we were also forbidden to chat about it in the unit and outside of it. Now a lot of time has passed. I decided to share it with you. Thank you for your attention. Take care of yourself. I'll start with the fact that I have a friend Boris who served in North Ossetia in a remote border unit in the mountains. Actually, I'll tell his story on his behalf. The military unit was located between the mountains, so to speak, in a gorge. The border chain of checkpoints ran along the mountain hills, and there was one checkpoint, everyone called it KLB, in a remote area, next to an abandoned village once built in the 1940s for the families of border guards. From this post, the entire valley with the village and the river were visible. The perimeter of the adjacent territory of the post passed next to the village. Along the perimeter there were lanterns, powered by a stationary diesel generator. It was the second year of service. I was already counting down the days until demobilization. And bam, a bus stop because of the Chechens in the unit. We got into a fight with them. So Yoga and I are assigned to night duty. He is sent to a distant post. I was left at the central point. All the alarming data from the border posts flows there. I'm sitting on duty. The bell rings. The panic button immediately goes off. Noise. Everything is flashing. I see that the call is coming from the KLB post. I pick up the phone and barely hear a muffled whisper which is mumbling something indistinctly. I try to understand and can only make out one phrase. God save us. I consider this a border breach and raise the alarm. At the same hour, a detachment moved out to help, which included me. Carefully approaching the post, a small building 4 by 4 meters, we saw that cartridges were lying everywhere. We became wary, but continued moving. Silence. No sounds. Absolutely none. We looked into the post. Tsuyoga was sitting there in the darkness, next to the panic button, his head bowed, holding a pistol to his head. We run in, turn on the light, and see that he is completely grey, and his shaking hand is mechanically pressing the trigger of an empty pistol, over and over again, trying to wait for a shot to the head. Everyone was stunned, and only the major approached him and calmly, with parental concern, removed his hand from his temple. Silently, he took the pistol and asked in a barely audible voice, "Where are the others, son?" He raised his eyes, and everyone saw that his previously emerald green eyes had turned grey. He did not answer anything. The next morning there was an investigation. The other 3 guards were never found. Many were court-martialed, including the major. Tsuyoga was sent home for treatment after the hospital. Having served my last 5 months, I was noisily returning home on the train with my fellow soldiers, and while drinking strong drinks, we decided to drop in to visit Tsuyoga. Everyone knew the address, because they were friends after all. They found the house, rang the bell, and he opened the door. They rushed to hug, set the table, and sat down and drank. It turns out that Tsuyoga had already gotten married. His grey hair had gone. His eye color had also returned to its former state, and he was alive and well. Of course, everyone was interested in what had happened, so they asked. I will tell the story from Sergei's perspective. We took up guard duty. Everything was as usual, quietly and calmly. The hour for the perimeter patrol approached. The sun was setting, but visibility was still good. We were already passing under the distant lantern when suddenly it went out, and for some reason, one of the soldiers and I simultaneously looked toward the village. In the rays of the sunset, we clearly saw silhouettes of people standing in the windows of the 2-story buildings, and we felt that each one of them was looking at us. We rushed to run from there. We ran to the post and told the sergeant, who only smiled and said, "The glass was glaring on the windows, so you imagined it." We calmed down and went to bed. At night, they wake me up, shaking my hand. I open my eyes and see a soldier in a peschanka, yellow uniform of the military from the 1940s. I grab the AKM, point it at him, and he calmly tells me, "Don't sleep, I was sleeping too." He turns around and leaves, and then I see a knife in his back. I shout rise. Everyone wakes up, but no one is gone. I tell them the story. Everyone laughs, except from the soldier from before, who's called Long. The sergeant says, "You're such a psycho," and goes out to smoke. Then he runs in like lightning and shouts, "Help, arms." We piled out onto the street, took up positions, and only then saw how white people were quickly approaching us along the slope in the darkness. White people, and clearly visible in the night, about 30 people. We opened fire and realized that we were not hitting a single target. Looking closely, I saw that they were not running, but rather gliding, since even the fern under one of them did not stir. It becomes clear that these are not people. In fear, I run into the checkpoint and close the door. I hear my fellow soldiers asking me to open it, but I can't. I'm paralyzed with fear. I hear their screams, shouts, shooting. Everything instantly becomes silent, and I begin to hear strange sounds, as if someone is rushing around the checkpoint and looking for an entrance. Silence for a second, and suddenly a deafening blow on the door, iron. The blows happen faster and faster. Soon the rumble dies down. About 10 minutes pass. I gather my courage and look outside the rectangular, bulletproof window, and my gaze almost touches the eyes of Long. His bloody face asks me to open it. With trembling lips I answer no, and then he lets out a scream, so wild and full of hatred. so strong that fear squeezed my heart. The storming of the door began again. I fall into a chair, press the panic button, turn on the radio, take out a gun, and that's it. I don't remember anything else. And only later, already in the hospital, I learned that this is not the only case. There were others. The doctors told me that the abbreviation KLB means symmetry, and that there, in the forties, the Cheche slaughtered the entire village, and although they could have been saved, they were considered an insignificant loss. Here is the story about this border unit. Everything is told from the words of my friend, who told it to me only once, when he was drunk, and with the face he had at that time, I do not think he was lying. Hello Anon. I work as an emergency doctor. Among other things, I have to go out to confirm deaths. Now, I will tell you about 3 cases, 3 deaths, because of which I will wake up in a cold sweat and peer into the darkness with horror until my eyes hurt for the rest of my days. Nothing united these 3 people in life: a pensioner, a representative of the old Moscow intelligence agency, and middle-aged men, probably without a specific occupation, except for professional alcoholism, and a student of a technical university. They were united by death under extremely similar circumstances. The first was an old woman. She lived with her husband, who the day before her death went to the country on some business. He decided to spend the night there and return to the city in the morning. Upon returning, he found his dead wife in the bathroom. She was lying on her back with her head to the wall opposite the door, where the shower is. She did not fall. She met her death lying down. The old woman died of acute heart disease. The main thing that struck me when I crossed the threshold of the bathroom was her facial expression. Usually, corpses do not have any special expression. Here, a face with dead eyes looked at me, distorted by some inhuman fear, the quintessence of horror. It was the most terrible grimace that I had seen in my life at that time. It is impossible to forget, and impossible to confuse, difficult to describe, and, I think, not a single actor, even if his teacher was Stanislavski 3 times, and Nemirovic Danchenko 4 times, will be able to portray it. It was unpleasant to be there, and I tried to finish all the formalities as quickly as possible. Then I did not pay attention to one important detail. The door to the bathroom was not only not locked, but also wide open. The next incident happened about a month later. An unemployed alcoholic, about 40 years old. No one wanted him. He lived alone. When such people die, they are usually found only when the smell of a corpse starts coming from their apartment. But here, his neighbor drinking buddy saw in the morning that the door to the apartment was ajar. He looked inside, saw the corpse of his friend, and called us and the cops. The body was lying in the hallway, the same indescribable expression of inhuman fear on the face. The eyes were looking towards the ajar front door. A superficial emergency examination showed no signs of violent death. Apparently, SCD, sudden coronary death. The face of the deceased was like 2 peas in a pod with the face of that old woman. At first glance at him, I broke out in a cold sweat, and goosebumps crawled across my body. In my head, the 2 cases merged into one picture. I imagined how this guy was already lying in bed. He was wearing pajama pants, but naked from the waist up, heard some noise from the front door, walked out of the room into the corridor, and saw something that could kill a strong, rather callous guy with just its mere appearance. The student was called in a couple of weeks after the drunk. He might not have been found soon either, but the landlady of his rented apartment came to check on him every month on a certain day. It turned out that month, this day followed the night when the student died. The body was lying in his bed, but his head was on the opposite side from the pillow and hanging down, as if he were trying to jump away from something towards the window. By the way, he lived on the 2nd floor, so an escape through the window was quite possible. Why did I think he was trying to escape from something unknown? The same expression of animal horror, eyes staring at the slightly open closet door. All this was painfully familiar to me. I don't know what happened to these people. I don't want to think and imagine what could have opened the door of a room or the front door in the middle of the night and appeared before their eyes. What kind of creature was it that could kill just with its appearance or its gaze? I could not write in the call card that these people died of fear, but that's exactly what happened in reality. On that fateful night, they found themselves alone in their apartment, face to face with something unknown, face to face with something so terrible that their hearts failed. I lived alone too. Now I drink a bottle of vodka every night. I can't fall asleep otherwise. I wait for it to come out of the darkness. Yeah, I'll probably die of pancreatic necrosis. So much alcohol won't go unnoticed, but I'd prefer that death to what I saw on these 3 calls. I'll tell this one. Be around 2009. Family was in upswing then. Dad was rich, sold property in Los Angeles to start a fruit packing company. Bought old packing factory out in Visalia, I think between SF and LA. Surrounded by orange growers everywhere, nothing for fucking miles and miles. It's a real old factory, but goddamn huge, with the conveyor belt still in good condition. Mom would force us to leave our mansion and computers to go out with him there. Us being me and my 3-year-old kid brother. Fucking hated every second of it there. Being a Los Angeles kid, I could literally not physically stand the silence out in the orange groves. So quiet that all you hear is the faint wind. Sometimes felt like I can hear the clouds forming and dissipating. Tried to still pass the time and entertain my baby bro. That day no workers were around, only a few office people, and my dad organizing the next purchase. Plop my brother in a wheelbarrow and wheel him around the property. Yay. Take him down the steep ramp underneath the factory. Looks like a loading area that leads into storage. Go down the ramp. It's suddenly pitch fucking black. My baby brother is not saying a word. I'm alert as fuck for some reason. Feels like we went into a different dimension. Stupidly, I inch myself in the wheelbarrow with my brother in it slowly through the dark. There is a wood threshold separating the next chamber. It's fucking huge and literally pitch black. Think of pushing past the threshold. Suddenly, every cell in my body screams to calmly turn the wheelbarrow around and leave. Baby brother is still silent but scared. Pull the wheelbarrow slowly back out the loading area, back up the ramp into sunlight. Pick up bro. Kick wheelbarrow away. Chill in the trailer for a bit. Bro is calm. I'm not. Rattled like a rabbit that got dropped from the jaws of a coyote. Fast forward. Hear a story from my dad. The past owner blew his top off with a shotgun down there. Nice, Dad. Thanks.